Assistant Superintendent of Technology at Front. No, I'm not.
Sorry, try again.
You sure? Okay. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. The final afternoon MERN session. My name is Bradley Hampson. I'm the Assistant Superintendent of Technology for Frontier School Division, and I have with me Francine Morin and Kendra Rieger from. See, I told you I'd be able to do it. It's not on here from the University.
You said my name correctly.
University of Manitoba, and they're going to be speaking to us on El Sistema inspired after-school programs. Is that okay? I'm going to hand it over to you. Thank you for joining us, both of you, ladies, and take it away.
Okay, well, we're going to begin by just giving you a little bit of an overview of a longitudinal study exploring the impacts of an after-school music program, specifically orchestral program, on young children, their families, and their communities. And we've decided today to focus mostly on student engagement and on two data sets. Pretty much the attendance data we're going to present today, as well as the academic data. So, like our colleagues in other disciplines, arts educators are also very concerned about practices and strategies that can reshape the socioeconomic circumstances of children who live in vulnerable circumstances. So an arts-based intervention program that uses music as the means for social transformation, and one that is modeled after the very famous El Sistema orchestral programs of Venezuela, has been implemented now in a couple of local school divisions here. And it's based on research that suggests that when children have intense involvement with high-quality arts programs, that can be associated with other positive outcomes and improved outcomes, academic outcomes, personal and social outcomes for students, particularly those at risk. And more specifically, this study is linked to a new strand of research, which is looking more specifically at El Sistema programs and the benefits of participation specifically in these programs for kids that go beyond just the music. So El Sistema in English means the system, and it was developed by Jose Antonio Abreu in 1975 in Venezuela, and this is a national music for social transformation project there. Do you want to move on? Yeah, next one. Okay. So for almost 40 years now, leaders of the programs in Venezuela do offer impoverished youth free instruments and music education as an alternative to gang life, to being involved in violent kinds of crime, drug dealing, and that sort of thing. So since its inception, this program nationally in Venezuela has reached over 2 million children and currently serves about 400,000 in 200 orchestra programs across that nation. So the kids are situated in what they call nucleos, where they receive sectional rehearsals, music instruction, working with teachers in communities. And these teaching musicians that work with the children are actually employing the philosophy and principles of the El Sistema movement, which also emphasizes a lot of social learning. Okay. In recent years, the Sistema movement has gained attention across the world, and so it's akin to the Venezuela programs that our programs locally here are modeled after. And I'm trying to avoid saying the name of our program because, of course, ethics requires me to protect the identities of the school divisions and all of that. So, moving on to the next slide, we have two urban school divisions that have partnered with its local symphony orchestra. We started the program with children from grade 1 to 3. we're now in year 4 of the program, so now the children are up to approximately grade 6. We started the program targeting stringed instruments, so we worked with the children on violin, viola, cello, and double bass, and we've gradually added new instruments along the way. So our program operates 5 days a week, every single day after school, for 3 hours every single day. And the children work with a lead Sistema music specialist as well as teaching musicians. And their weekly schedule is hectic. It includes sectional rehearsals, full orchestra rehearsals, choir practices. We do other arts and special activities with the children. They're fed there as well. They have a little bit of recess time. But primarily they're working hard at their music for 3 hours each and every day, 15 hours a week. And they also perform many times throughout the year. I was going to show you a little video, but this won't be possible because of copyrights. We can't record the recorded video, so I won't do that. So can we move to the next? So I think just very quickly, this study is exploring the role of music in social justice, looking at the impacts very specifically of this program on the academic, social, and musical development of the children involved in the program. We're also looking at the impact of the program on family, on communities, as well as the partnering institutions, and also studying fairly closely the pedagogical features of the model as well. We have 6 big research questions that are governing the study more wholly, but because of the methodology that we're using, there's also many sub-questions involved here as well. Can we just move on? Because that'll take too much time. So the methodology being employed, it's a multi-phase participatory action research design. So the study consists of several phases, many small studies that are tied to those big 6 questions. I'm using a mixed methods approach to data collection and analysis, which is fairly typical of this type of evaluation research that's ongoing. And essentially, you need it. You need it to obtain information on various dimensions of the project. You need this to allow for the convergence of findings, and you also, from a more pragmatic perspective, you simply need to select and align methods to accomplish particular tasks within a study like this as a whole. In terms of participants, the numbers of participants change every year because it depends upon which data sets I'm collecting and which participant subgroups I'm working with at any given time. But just generally speaking, I've been very successful with very high participation rates from teachers, educators, school leaders, and children. I have almost 100% of those participants involved in pretty much every attempt to collect data. And with families, we've done fairly well as well. Usually the participation rate somewhere ranges from around 40 to 65%. So, you know, if I want to do focus groups with parents and arrange for that, I might get, you know, maybe half of them coming out to something like that. Okay. So Kendra has worked hard with me. She's a doctoral student in nursing, and she has been working really closely with me on the attendance data. So we're going to let Kendra share a little bit with you on that.
I think I can man this all.
Okay.
Okay. So yeah, it's been really great to work with Dr. Morin on this and to kind of see the educational perspective on research. That's been a really great experience for me. As one part of the study, we looked at children's academic data to see if there was any evidence of the program impacting their academic achievement. So academic data was collected from children at one of the school sites, and this was a site which administered division-wide assessments. So math and reading academic data was available for 31 students at this one site in so the students were in grade 3 and 4. And there were 14 students in grade 3 and 17 students in grade 4. So of these 31 students, 22 children had been in the Sistema program for 2 years, and 9 had been in the program for 1 year. So these were the tools that were used to collect the data, and you may be familiar with them. The children's mathematic levels were assessed with a standardized tool called the Learning Pathway, Planning for Learning and Assessment in Number Sense and Algebraic Reasoning. That was long. I had to learn how to say that. This tool is developed locally and is closely aligned with Manitoba's framework of curriculum outcomes for mathematics. And it's used to determine the children's individual level of numeracy. The Fontes and Pinnell benchmark assessment system was used to assess the children's reading levels and places them on an A to Z continuum. And this gradient is associated with the continuum of literacy in their school grade. So both assessment tools are administered to all children, kindergarten through grade 6, 3 times a year in October, March, and May, although one of our assessments, I believe they did it in June instead of May, so I guess there's some slight flexibility. So for children who had been in the Sistema program for 2 years, we had 6 data collection points, and for children who had been in the Sistema program for 1 year, we had 3 data collection points, and we consulted a statistician from the Manitoba Centre of Nursing and Health Research who helped us figure that out and how to use that data from the field. And it was a good experience, but a little bit challenging, as I'll get into. So what we were really looking at and what we're very interested in knowing is the distance or gap between the children's actual levels and their expected grade levels changing over time as they were involved with the Sistema program, and hopefully was it improving. I've made a hypothetical graph here, so this isn't actual data, but let's say these are the grade levels and this is time, and as these lines go this way, they move through time. So these would be our 6 assessment points. So the gray line is the expected grade level and the purple line is the observed level, and what we are wondering, are hoping to see, is that as the students may have started behind, that as they progressed through time and participated in the Sistema program, they perhaps became more engaged with their education, and we started to see those gaps closing and potentially even close. So in order to compare their observed and expected levels, we had to actually work with the assessment tools to come up with a actual expected grade level outcomes that could be used for statistical analysis. And that was a little challenging because the tools weren't specifically made for this type of data analysis. So we worked with our statistician to come up with this table. As you'll see, this shows the expected grade levels at each measurement time period for reading. We also have a table for math. So in order to create this, we looked at the assessment tool guidelines and also consulted with the school principal, and came up with this table which shows the grade level, the expected level at each measurement period according to the assessment tool, and then the SPSS variable value. SPSS is a data analysis program that we used. So I think a good way to explain this really is to show an actual example. So if you look at grade 5, and I'm sure as teachers familiar with this, that there's a range of values expected in the 3rd measurement period. It's pretty hard with SPSS to analyze V to W. So what we did is on the A to Z continuum, we assigned it each a numerical value that could be used by SPSS. And then for example, this was especially challenging when there was a range, because the statistician recommended that he wanted 1 data point in order to analyze it. So we had to average these values. And for example, grade 5, 3rd measurement period, we averaged it, so the expected grade level came out to 6.45, and 6.45 doesn't equal grade 6.45. We had to make some changes because of the way the tool worked and because we had to include nursery as a starting point. So yeah, that was lots of fun. And then after we figured out the expected grade level, we had to calculate the average math and reading levels so we could compare it to the expected grade level. So this is our table of the averages that were calculated for the students' actual reading and math scores by grade level and time period. For example, if you look here at time period 1, this is grade 3, and for math, the average was 1.54, and for reading, the average was 2.14. So one other thing you may notice here is that the sample sizes fluctuate quite a bit throughout the time measurement periods, and that's kind of part of, this is actual field research, so it's not like this perfectly controlled environment, and we had work with that, and actually affected our analysis in the end. So here we have our actual analysis, and this is where we compared the students' actual reading and math levels with their expected reading and math levels, and came up with what we call gap scores, which I'm sure you're familiar with. So this was the mathematical calculation that was used. We subtracted the expected grade level from their average reading or math level and came up with gap scores, and we averaged these gap scores, which can be seen under this title here, mean. So these are all the average gap scores for each time period. So here's our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So once again, I think an example helps to understand these tables. If you look at the math gap, so this is for all the students, the math gap in the first time period was minus 0.92. But here, if we look at the math gap at the sixth time period, minus 0.62. So what we were really looking for was to see a trend, a change in these mean scores throughout time. And as you can see, and from what I just pointed out, there was a decreasing trend over time, which was kind of exciting to see. The mathematics score, like I just went over, started out at minus, do you mind pointing it out? Thank you. Minus 0.93, and it ended up at minus 0.62. And the reading began at minus 0.88 and ended up at minus 0.45. So again, an overall 0.43 decrease in gap scores. So this observed trend of these systemic students is especially important when you look at it in the broader school context. In this general population, as students progress through time, less students are meeting grade level. Just an example from math, 7% of the general population is meeting grade level at the end of grade 1, but only 3% by the end of grade 6. So it's kind of the opposite trend. So although these results are encouraging, they should be interpreted with some caution. We were hoping to see the gap scores decrease, which we did, but they didn't ever reach 0, and they did fluctuate between measurement periods. As well, there was quite a bit of missing data, as you could see by the sample size, and it was a small sample size, so we weren't able to carry out inferential statistics. So we don't really know if this trend was actually statistically significant or just occurred by chance. So future research is absolutely needed to determine if this observed trend is consistent and if it's statistically significant. And a few next steps for researchers with the academic data is to increase the sample size, decrease the amount of missing data, and really importantly is to obtain a comparison group.
And so each year, our sample size does get bigger, and we do have the one site that does collect the standardized data, so it does allow us to track this over time, so we will be continuing to follow this. Our statistician would like us to have sort of a true comparative group, which would be comparing systemic children with non-systemic children in the same school environment, but because of the ethical constraints around that, our control group, so to speak, is a hypothetical control group. It's where would we like to see, where would the average child be to be reading at target or to be at math. So that's what we're comparing our group against. Okay. So we're here today because student engagement is considered to be one of the most critical issues in Canadian education today, and certainly here as well. When researchers are looking at student engagement, one of the things we look at is academic data, and one of the other ones is attendance data, and are kids coming to school. For this particular group of children who are in quite vulnerable circumstances, as I said earlier, absenteeism is a serious problem for this particular group of children. Both sites are in very low-income neighborhoods. Many of them present with some of the key risk factors that we know are highly problematic for children. Teen mothers living in poverty, certainly contact with CWS and so on. We know that kids who present with those risk factors, the majority of them do not graduate from school. In fact, about 90% do not. So this is the group that we are working with here. I'll tell you a little bit about what the data, attendance data has showed us. I have collected all of the attendance data for all of the children in the program. I'm going to talk about the preliminary analysis that was done between year 1 and year 2 of the program. Year 3, I have all of that data, but it's not all fully analyzed yet. So just so you know, the sources of data were all of the official school attendance records that I was able to have access to, not just attendance, but tardiness as well. And I have all of the attendance records for the actual music program itself as well. Okay, so looking at tardiness first. For many children in the program, you can see that tardiness is a problem. Collectively, they've accumulated quite a few late arrivals to school, and you can see more often in the morning than in the afternoon, about a 4-to-1 ratio. Perhaps even more concerning is the number of accumulative absences that this little group was away from school. We see almost 3,000 half days of absenteeism among this group of children at about a 3-to-2 ratio from morning to afternoon. So the fact that absences are even more frequent than tardiness is pretty concerning. If you look to this table, though, there's a few encouraging things I think that I was beginning to see. One thing that we noted, that the range of instances for individual children remained exactly the same. So some children missed or came late 0 times, and some children were late as often as 115 times. But if you look at the average number of instances for the children in the music program, that dropped pretty substantially from almost 35 times down to just 21 times. So the children were late less often in the second year for the children who were in for 2 years. Also, for half days of absenteeism, just you see that going down ever so slightly, right? In the first year of the program, kids missed about 11 and just slightly over 11% of all their time in school, and by year 2, that's down a little bit. Also, I think it's a little bit encouraging to see that the range of absences is down somewhat. So you see that gap narrowing just a bit, which probably means that some of the chronic attendance issues are changing. Okay, let's look at the next one. What I wanted to see, of course, as a researcher would be that the children who are participating in the music program, I would have liked to see their attendance get better and better as the year progressed. I didn't see that. You can see from this table that at both sites consistently the children's attendance fluctuates up and down. It's spread throughout the year almost equally, no change really. But overall, it's down a little bit. Okay? What I think, careful here. I think understanding children's absences is also really important in a study like this. I learned that was very difficult because the data that I collected showed that the majority of the attendance was due to really unknown reasons or for absences that were unexcused. So in other words, we never could figure out why those children were away from school. We were essentially, it was unexplained. We couldn't get in touch with the parents to tell us why the kids were away, and that was the largest proportion of absenteeism. We do know that about 30% were excused for illness, 20% for reasons that they were not ill, appointments, about 5%. One thing that was encouraging was with only 31 children left in the program in year 1, we had 10 children who were suspended from school. So these are pretty severe behavior problems, right? This has got to be violent behavior, destruction of school property, the kinds of reasons that, you know, even little ones get suspended from school. We had 10 instances of those in year 1 of the program. In year 2 of the program, with 77 children, we brought that down to just 1 child that was suspended from school. So I think that's positive. Okay, moving on a little bit. We did notice some differences between gender. We did find in year 2, the Site 2 girls demonstrated better school and music program attendance overall than girls at the first site. And girls at the first site have been in the program for longer. So I found that discouraging. And those girls also showed worsening attendance in both the program and at school in the second year, which I didn't find very encouraging. On the other hand, the opposite occurred for all the little boys in the program. The boys that were in the program for a longer period had better attendance at school and in the program overall, and there was a real positive trend for boys. They started to become more engaged in both school and in the music program. I don't have any way of explaining that other than because the opposite had occurred the year before. I said we have to work more on engaging the boys, and maybe we forgot all about the girls or something. I'm not quite sure exactly what happened, but there you go. That was the outcome. Okay, moving on. So if you look at this picture overall, you'll see that the best attendance was for boys in the music program, then for girls at school, and then for boys at school, and then girls in the music program. If you look at, and if that tells us something about engagement and commitment, you can see how that would play out with them. Okay, next. One thing that was great though, year 1, almost half of the children had chronic attendance problems, which means they missed more than 10% of school. In year 2, that was down to 40%. So that was good. So this group here is obviously pretty concerning. So I guess just overall, you know, is this program helping to engage children in school? I think the academic data is encouraging. We do see that the kids have got just a little bit better at both reading and math, almost like half a grade level of improvement in reading, and I think about a third of a grade level in math is what we observed, so that's good. If we think about chronic attendances being down, suspensions being down, attendance slightly better, school tardiness better, some of those kinds of things, I think we are beginning to see some positive changes that after school programs like this can make a difference. So we'll stop there, and if you have any questions, we could try to answer a question or two.
It's probably too bad that it has to be an after school. You know, you think kids are probably pretty worn out after a full day of school.
They get tired. Yeah, there's no question that they get tired. Especially if they don't sleep at night, which is often why the children are late for school.
Repeat the question.
Yes. It's unfortunate that the program is after school because some children get tired. And I think that is the case, that some children do get tired.
Thanks very much for an interesting piece of, and I'm excited to see the results of this, and particularly because of my own experience. When I was 10 years old, I had the opportunity to attend a special new school that was being founded in London, Ontario, in the inner city. I would have never have had any future in music or likely in academics had I not attended this school. It brought kids from impoverished families from many parts of the City of London. It was a special project, and the school still exists today. It has an unbroken chain of over 30 years of success, and I can just feel it welling up inside me just thinking of this, because this opportunity changed my life, and looking back upon it, it has changed many, many lives for those that I went to school with, and what was unique about it on a couple of fronts was that it was co-curricular. It was very demanding academically, as well as demanding in terms of the genre and the type of music that we were eventually participating in. Remarkable thing. So just a question about the manner in which this can be researched. Does the El Sistema have programmatic music about it, or is it a program that allows for just kind of ad hoc selection of what the students actually participate in, or is there a rather standardized music curriculum per se that might make for a bit of a tightening of certain of the research components?
Well, there's definitely an El Sistema curriculum nationally in Venezuela. We have no governing body like that here. There's no national string curriculum here in Canada, so it's being locally developed. But it is essentially classical repertoire. But because we have so many Aboriginal children in our program, we're doing a lot more Aboriginal fiddling and those kinds of things, because we're trying to create our program as one that would be more culturally responsive and helping the kids connect more with their own identities. And that is actually something else that I'm studying, is the ethnic identity piece as well. Yes?
I have a question about the students or the youth that you're tracking. Are you consistently tracking the same student from kindergarten to grade 6?
We're tracking all the children in the program as long as they stay. So, for example, in year 1, I started with over 40 children, only 31 were left in the program, because these are very transient neighborhoods, right? And this is why we had missing data, because kids drop in and out of school, and they're there for some testing days, and some testing days they're not. So this is why it'll be important to continue to track these same children over time, which I think is really important, because there are very few studies of arts intervention projects that have this opportunity to actually watch the same group of kids over a long period of time. And I think your comments about the school system's emphasis on educating the children from the head up all the time and ignoring the soul and the emotional education of children. I mean, through the arts, we are trying to teach children about empathy. They are getting that kind of social, moral character kind of development in this program as well. It's a very big part of what we do in the Sistema program.
Okay, that's a wrap. I'd like, Francine, to thank you very much on behalf of MERN Winter Forum.
Thank you.
As you as well, Kendra. I'd like to remind everybody in our audience, both present and virtual, that this video, along with all the other ones from the MERN sessions, will be available on the MERN website in about 2 weeks. You can watch it at your leisure. Again, thank you both very much for a wonderful presentation.